do you store your USB cables?
Here and there.
Do you coil them up? Do you have like Velcro ties? Do you keep them segregated by type? Like, what's your strategy?
Yeah. I thought we were talking like a junk drawer or, like where do they all go kind of thing. But you're talking in what form are they stored? Like, how do you configure them for storage?
First one, then the other is what I'm asking, I guess.
I have developed a little technique that basically just sort of turns the cable, like the cables are stored circularly.
Yeah.
Let's say it would be way easier if I could just hold up the
crossover loop. I do that.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you just coil them in a round circle and then like each end you sort of like braid around.
You tuck it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that to hold pretty snugly. And also crucially, you're not putting any like weird, like
you're not doing like a coil around like you would if it was a rope or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say no, like 180 degree stress on no hard bends on the cable.
Well, also doing the figure eight, like doing it like I would do like a boat rope. With the back and forth, and then you wrap around.
Yeah. Also
leaves the ends usually poking out in weird ways because they're like, it's not good.
Yeah.
So I do that. I do the coil around, and then I have a DOP kit that somebody sent me as a tchotchke thing at some point that just holds. It's like my go bag for USB cables.
I'm sorry, a what kit?
A DOP kit. I don't know what DOP stands for. It's what my dad always called them.
But DOP kit? Like
it's this
DOP?
Yeah, it's like you put your toiletries in it.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, no. It's
one of those.
A ditty bag?
What, it's called a ditty bag?
I thought I've heard somebody in my life call it that before.
Huh.
Well, hang on, I'm yes, okay, yes, you can call that a ditty bag.
Okay, I always called it a DOP kit. I think it's DOP kit, but I don't know why.
Okay.
Yeah, DOPP. It's a toiletry bag called a toiletry kit, DOP kit, bathroom bag, ditty bag, sponge bag, toilet bag, personal hygiene kit, travel kit, or wash kit.
Why are there so many names for things?
Because, look, our country is a alphabet soup.
Mm-hmm. A melange, you might say. Go on.
Right. We stole names for things from all over the world, and as a result, let's see. The DOP kit is a term referring to toiletry kits for men in World War II soldiers before later becoming a common term for toiletry kits. It's coined by leatherworker Charles Doplet, who patented the idea of DOPs in 1919 and got a contract with the Army during World War II. There you go.
Apparently thought he was deserving of naming the thing after himself.
I mean, look, you invent a bag for your toothpaste and you get to name it after whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But I put my USB stuff in there and like also my portable batteries and I have a spare watch charger. But I don't like, I've reached a point now where the old USB cables are becoming a little scarce.
Mm-hmm.
Like a mini.
Oh.
I only have like 2 minis left probably at this point.
I was expecting you to say they were becoming too plentiful or too much clutter or something. But yes, that is the reverse problem. When you get rid of too much, all of a sudden you don't have the old thing you need anymore. Yeah.
So a few years ago, I was like, oh, look, I have 50 of these mini USB cables. I'm never going to use these again. And I chucked them in the recycling bin, which maybe is still in the garage, if I'm being honest, but probably I took to electronics recycling.
This is becoming a cautionary tale because I am exactly who you were before that purging process. Like I started to say, I'm very impressed you can fit all of your USB cables into one DOP kit or ditty bag. Because I've got a gigantic drawer of them, but this kind of makes me want to be like maybe a little more cautious about. I am going to get rid of some stuff, but like maybe keeping like 5 micro USB cables is not the worst thing.
So I have this set. I have like 2 sets of IKEA drawer, like those kind of crappy IKEA metal drawers, the ones that are like 4 feet tall, and I use them as the place that my mixer and my audio stuff and all that lives away from the rest of the loud computer gear, and that has a bunch of drawers in it, and that has like a couple of spare XLR cables and extra power cables and extra HDMI and DisplayPort and extra 1/4-inch analog and MIDI cables and like all like I'm pretty sure there's a Firewire 800 in there somewhere.
Right.
It's all the weird shit that you might need. Plus like there's a drawer that has dongles. So there's like a USB-C to Firewire dongle in there and USB-C to Ethernet, and USB-C, like little USB-C hubs and all this other stuff. And then I have like a drawer with mice. I needed a mouse the other day because it turned out if you use mouse without borders on a machine that doesn't have a mouse connected to it, it makes terrible mouse trails all across the screen when you use the mouse.
That's an odd bug.
I mean, if you plug in a mouse, you know what happens? The trails go away.
No more trails?
Yeah, so I plugged in an old mouse. But like I've been using this, like my mice don't break very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I need like one spare mouse. I don't need 3 spare mice.
I was going to say, you've got me beat on spare mice by a fair margin, it sounds like.
Well, I have more, like, I also have more computers in the circulate, like, because like my daughter uses a mouse now and my wife uses a mouse, and you know, like, so I got to keep the family fed in mice. But I don't know, man. I wish I hadn't thrown out all those micro USB cables. You should hoard them more, is what I'm saying.
Oh, well, now that I've got your permission.
Yeah. I'm just going to come over to your house when I need a micro USB cable. That's all I'm saying.
All right. You know what? Happy to serve.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Hello.
Thought about putting a little flanger on there just to give it a little wah.
Okay.
But I decided not to.
I didn't want to bring this up earlier, but now you've said it again on the podcast.
Yeah.
You said flanger before we started.
Yeah.
Is it not flanger?
Look, there are words that you only read and you've never heard anybody say.
Okay.
This is one of those words. All I know is that it's spelled Flanger.
Yeah, it sure is.
That's what it sounds like.
It sure does.
I'm going to turn it off before people turn off their radios.
I mean, it doesn't sound entirely offensive. There's something like kind of pleasant about it. You wouldn't want to listen to it for too long, but
it sounds like 60s aliens.
Yeah,
like
sure. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of VFX in the 60s or audio effects in the 60s came about because people took like guitar pedals that people were hacking together in their garages.
Exactly.
And then ran the voice mic through them. But
people got their hands on vacuum tubes and started making analog circuits and then started finding out what was possible.
Yeah, all sorts of exciting, weird stuff happened.
Is what you might say. How good, as a slight digression here, how adept are you
Brad, make words good.
Okay, I started to put a note in the thing to edit that out, but instead you've made a joke about it, so I'll just try again. How adept are you at reading the pronunciation guide on Wikipedia?
Bad.
Okay.
Real bad.
Can you sight read it? I guess not.
No, I have to hit the button on Google that says, hey, here's how the robot says you should pronounce this.
Okay, because I'm staring at the pronunciation for flanger. Flanging.
Oh, God. Okay.
I'm going to say that could go either way. I'm actually not sure how to read that symbol.
Yeah, no, this is incomprehensible. This is a thing that's, oh, wait. Oh, no, that's an example, not the way you say it. Yeah, I don't know how to say that. It's like there's a F and an L. I know that's fla. And then there's some stuff. And then there's an ND, which is nd. And then there's a 3, like a sigma maybe, and an I and an N with a weird tail. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a no from me, dog.
Everything I'm seeing says soft G sound.
So flanger.
Flanger. Long A, soft G.
Brad, what are we talking about on the podcast this week?
I don't. You tell me, man.
Pronunciation of flanger. We're going to do 2 hours on this.
That's right. That's right. Ranking of flanger pronunciations.
Ranking of phonemes. Go. There's 48 in the English language. That's not right. There's more than that, I think.
Since somebody already beat us to the ranking of letters in the alphabet.
Look, there was a time when I was pretty good at the pronunciation guide thing because when we were doing the foo stuff, we had to. We were doing lip sync, and we tried to do actual mouth and tongue movements to make it look right. And it turned out to be a phenomenally complicated thing. And we just got it close enough and we're like, yeah, this looks pretty good. And then moved on.
I'm sure it's endlessly complicated. Am I crazy though? Or I mean, I can read dictionary pronunciations pretty much just fine, but doesn't Wikipedia use a different system?
It uses something more complicated than the thing that we learned in elementary school. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. They use the IPA transcription system.
How many IBUs is that IPA?
I don't know. What is an IBU?
International Bitters Units.
Wait. Is that for beer? Real?
Yeah.
International bitter. Wow. Okay. I always just wrote that off as some like extreme beer nerd thing. I mean, I like beer just fine, but I figured that was something I just didn't care that much about. Yeah, you're right. International bitterness units.
Yeah. So it gives you an idea of how hoppy your beer is going to be.
See. Okay.
It's like what's the thing that the hot sauce nerds use?
Scoville. Scoville rating.
It's like that, but real.
Scovilles for beer.
Yeah, Scoville. There's a real Scoville inflation problem right now.
Is there really?
It's my feeling.
Is that not a standardized unit?
No, I don't think so. I think once you get over a certain amount of hot, it doesn't matter. That's my Like once you start having visions when the food hits your tongue, it's not going to make any difference. Come at me, nerds.
Yeah,
it's where I'm at.
Yeah.
This week, speaking of nerds, we have a potpourri of projects.
A project potpourri.
And it doesn't smell like lavender or grandmother's. It's a mixture of fixing things and doing things we have learned the hard way over time, and cool audio business. And finally, we're going to learn about containers, because like you and I were both big fans of jails back in the BSD days. And I have never taken the time to get good at Docker since I switched over to Linux for server purposes. So we're going to talk about containers a little bit.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? You want to start with
let's start with fixing your monitor, because that was I got the setup for that 2-3 weeks ago on the Patreon episode, and I want to hear the exciting conclusion. And for people who didn't hear that Patreon episode, I think this is a fascinating topic. And also, before we get to my stuff, I will say I've got a little bit of time off coming up here from Nextlander. So that's why I've got mostly a list of prospective projects here that I am going to work on in the coming days, whereas you have got some stuff you have done already.
There you go. Okay. So I have this ultra wide. It's one of the first LG ultra wides. I wrote about it on Tested like 10 or 12 years ago.
Wow. And you're still using it?
Yeah, well, it's like my third it's like my third monitor for the second PC on my desk. So
anything. Well, I'm trying to put this in historical context. Like in anything that you wrote about on Tested has got to be showing some age at this point.
It's like it's at least 12 years old. So one day okay. Other side note, it's also in portrait orientation. So it's a 34-inch ultra wide, 21:9 in portrait orientation. It's very tall.
Yes.
I like it. It makes me happy. Windows 11 finally knows how to handle that right. Windows 10 always had problems with it. It would try to make things like side by side, which is not good when you use the window snapping.
Sure.
So one day I turned on the computer that's attached to it, and it just didn't turn on. Didn't make it, like normally it makes a nice little chime. It goes bomb, and then it turns on, and it just didn't turn on. It was after a power failure, or maybe I had knocked the power cord loose from the power strip that's up under my desk. And when I Googled it, it turned out it was a fairly common problem in LG ultrawides. And then I didn't have time to deal with it when it was breaking, when this happened. So instead, I just set up remote desktop on that computer and started remote desktoping into that computer when I needed it and didn't worry about it. So 9 months later, I finally had time to futz with it. And I found
hang on, sorry. Did it just stay where it was for that 9 months, just inert?
I kind of moved it up so it's flat against the wall, so it's out of the way. But yes, for the most part, it just stayed there, a big black slab of shame. Because I'll be honest, because it's ultra wide and portrait, it kind of it's a little scary taking it off the arm, because the arm is super under a lot of load, and when I lift it off, I'm afraid I'm going to break my jaw every time.
Yikes.
So I don't move it without need. Right. Okay. So I got time. I was like, I'm going to take this thing apart and see what's up with it. I looked at some websites, and I found this WordPress blog that basically said, hey, if you short out, and this is where it gets a little hinky. It says, if you short out pins 1 and pins 4 on this EEPROM on the board, it'll kind of reset let me take a step back. The thing that's broken on it is there's an EEPROM, which is a programmable flash ROM that you have to like hard program, not like you can't like program it with software on the firmware normally.
Right.
But what happens is when the EEPROM gets a checksum on the EEPROM that's not good, even if the contents of the EEPROM are still okay, it puts the machine into a loop. So the CPU for the monitor, because everything has a CPU now, the CPU for the monitor just keeps rebooting and never successfully boots.
Is that an intentional fail-safe mechanism? Like it's like, okay, this EEPROM may be bad, we shouldn't boot because something else might break, or is it just it doesn't know what to do?
They just fucked up. The general take on the internet is they should have fixed this, because later models don't do this. It's only the first 2 years of LG monitors.
I see.
And the way you can get in that fail-safe mode, in that bad bit mode, is by turning off the power unexpectedly. So if you turn it off with the switch or shut it down with the button, no problem.
Okay.
But if the power dies, the power goes out, the monitor cannot come back to life after that.
Wow, that is an enormous bug.
It is. It's not 100% of the time. It's just sometimes.
Man,
so
that's
it's like if you live in Florida, you have a lot more problem with these monitors if you live in California where our power is relatively stable.
Right.
So this blog post was like, hey, if you short out these two, get your multimeter out and put it in resistor mode and just short out these two things, and you're going to send some juice through it and it'll probably flip the bit. You'll be fine. So I was like, well, that seems easy. I'll try that. I popped it open. It's like there's a bazillion chips on the board. It's on a different place on every monitor, the bad EEPROM, but it's always labeled the same.
Okay.
So I flipped through there and I found the thing, and I spent like an hour and a half laying on the floor of the living room with power going into the monitor, shorting out this chip. It made the bomb sound once, and then it didn't come back after that.
I'm sorry, the what sound?
The boom when it turns on.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like a nice little chime.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant literally the word bomb as an explosive.
No. It like when the monitor powers up and wakes up and the CPU fires up, it goes ding, and you're like, oh, my monitor's on. That's nice. So
you didn't fry anything as far as you know.
Well, at this point, it's unclear because it's still not working, right?
Sure.
So I give up after laying on the floor. My eyes were tired. My back was tired, the whole thing. So I close it back up, put it back on the scary mount. I look at the next step. And then I realize that there's like 4,000 comments on this WordPress blog. And I start reading the comments, and the comments are like, hey, if you can't fix it with the shorting out thing, it seems like it seems like the people who have success with that are shorting it not exactly in the way that they say, because the connectors, the pins are really tiny. It's an 8-pin EEPROM, 4 on each side, and it's hard to tell what you're actually shorting because they're so small unless you have like magnifiers. So this guy came in and was like, I hacked this firmware. I fixed the firmware for the monitor so it doesn't do the thing anymore, so it doesn't loop. It doesn't get stuck in the loop if the check bit is flipped. And you can just download it here on this ROM site. And if you buy this ROM programmer with a clip that's designed to like piggyback on top of this SOP8, you don't even have to desolder the EEPROM from the board. Or you could go to eBay and pay $10 for like a ROM that somebody flashed that's fixed, basically.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, real quick, is his fix like, was he just restoring a valid checksum to it, meaning that this could happen again if the power went out again, or was this like permanently fixed, like he rewrote something that will make this not happen again? So
like in the choose your own adventure of how to fix this 12-year-old monitor, that's the choice you have to make. Because the EEPROM isn't actually corrupt, it's just the checksum bit that's flipped. Right. You can just download you can get this CH341A programmer is what it's called with the SOP8 clip. And you can just download the existing ROM from the chip and then mark the ROM writable and reflash the existing ROM, and it'll reset the checksum, and then it'll just work.
Right. But again, is that, or well, maybe you're
going to be susceptible to the same power outage problem again in the future.
Yes.
I downloaded a fixed ROM and put that on. Now, is it actually fixed? I don't know. I didn't turn the monitor on and off a bunch of times to see if it's going to break again. But if I get another few years out of it, I'll be fine. So you get the CH341A programmer thing, which is a USB dongle that has like a cool lever actuated mount for this style of EEPROM, like the down through pin 8-pin jobbers.
Okay, sorry, I had to go Google this thing because I need a visual. And wow, that thing's cool.
It's like also a friction fit for it with a lever on the side.
Yeah, and it's also like $10. It looks like very cheap.
Yeah, it was so this is where I ended up. The thing to fix it was $10, or I could buy the chip for $10 and do a bunch of really fiddly soldering. And I was like, I'm just going to buy the thing to fix it for $10 and clip it on. So the other part of it is it comes with this like plastic clamp that has 4 connectors on each side, and you just line that up with the pins and then release it, and it kind of sticks on to the EEPROM, and you could just reprogram it right there.
Man, that's cool.
Now, I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've ever flashed a ROM like this. I don't think I ever did a real hardware BIOS flash in the old days, although I have seen people do that at like the screwdriver shop, because it used to be if you needed a BIOS update for your old ass computer, you would pull the ROM chip out of the computer, take the whole computer in, and go down to your like screwdriver shop, and they would hook up a device probably with a serial cable, I think, to a ROM flasher. You put the ROM in their ROM flasher and they do the thing, and then you take it home and plug it in and see if it works.
Interesting. I didn't know that was the thing that kind of small shops like that did. That's cool. Like I know I've talked about before, I had to hot swap a BIOS that I screwed up a flash on one time.
Yeah.
Because my roommate happened to have the exact same model of motherboard.
Remains incredible to me.
and was out of town at the time.
Oh no, you did it with
Brad. Maybe I've never mentioned that part.
Non-consensual.
He was on a business trip, and I can't remember.
You
if
got
I
up to some dark business, is what I'm hearing.
I can't remember if I had helped him build that machine, or maybe I had just given him the recommendation of like, oh yeah, this board is working great for me. You should buy one. But at any rate, he had the exact same board and CPU that I did, and he was gone. And I was like, well, and I can't remember what it was I screwed up the BIOS with. It was like it might have been some custom BIOS that allowed extra overclocking or something like that. But anyway,
my God.
The flash went bad. So I went and booted his machine, pulled his BIOS out while the machine was running, stuck mine in,
and so bad,
and did a BIOS, like a stock BIOS flash to it. And it worked just fine. And both machines continued puttering along forever afher. Anyway, please go on.
Okay. So anyway,
but the point is, I didn't realize that like screwdriver shops would offer.
There's the place I used to go would do that for you if you needed it. It was a common thing.
That's cool.
So the reflash, the part of the problem with the CH341A thing is that the flash tools for it, like it doesn't come with the software you need to flash it. And there's options you can boot Linux and just like that's a flash ROM is just built in and it knows how to talk to this particular chip, which was probably in retrospect would have been the easier thing to do. I tried a bunch of kind of janky CH341A programmer applications until the problem I had was that they would say they were writing, it would act like it was successful, it would check Summit, and it would be like, yeah, we're good. And then it wouldn't have written anything. And it turns out LG write protects the chip, which makes sense. But if your program writer doesn't know to unwrite protect the chip when it's doing the write, then the write wouldn't stick. So once I downloaded a EEPROM writer that knew how to do that, I was good to go.
And it was just easy peasy from there.
I unclipped the thing, put it back together, plugged all the cables back in. The nice thing about doing the EEPROM flash is you didn't have to have the power onto the monitor when you were doing this, because the SOP clip in the CH341A would pass through the power it needed to reprogram the ROM. So it was like a lot less scary as a whole than dumping too much voltage through this little EEPROM to try to, jumpstart it back to life.
Now, did you end up trying to turn the monitor on before you reassembled it?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It was the disassembly on this monitor was not too bad. There was one screw holding the back plastic on and then a whole buttload of clips.
Oh, I hate clips.
Well, and what I will say is their clips are pretty good. So they're far enough in that they're like, you could get a guitar pick under the edge and kind of just jimmy it around a little bit at a time. And it didn't break any of the clips taking it off.
Okay.
It's not the tiny, super delicate clips. It was designed to be opened.
Right.
But then you did have to open up the internal like electrical shield box and flip that over and it was like opening LCDs is a little bit less scary than opening CRTs because there aren't like capacitors. I mean, I guess there are probably capacitors in the power supply for this thing. If it had an internal power supply, that would kill you. This monitor has an external power supply, so it was a little less scary because it's just getting like 19 volts or something, and I can't remember.
Yes, if I ran everything in my benevolent dictatorship, vote for me.
Yes,
one of the things I would unilaterally declare.
Internal power supplies only.
Well, no. I mean, there are cases for external power supplies. I mean, it's kind of annoying to have an extra box in line that you have to put somewhere, but like these monitors have got external power supplies, for example. Like sometimes you just want the device to be small.
I like the old Dell where the power supply was just in. You just jammed a 3-prong up in the back of the monitor.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are cases for both. The thing I was going to say is I would ban clips. I would all devices must be disassemblable
by screw.
By screw.
But then what if you wanted to have a really flat TV and you didn't want to have any screw holes in the back?
Look, screws can be pretty short.
That's true. So anyway, it's been working for like 2 weeks now, and
cool. Yeah. How did it feel like the first time it worked when you pressed the button and heard the blong? And
the funny thing is, I had to reset all my settings. So the last part of this is when you boot it up the first time, you have to do something that's going to rewrite settings to the wherever the settings are stored on a different piece of flash someplace. I don't exactly understand why that was, but the first time I did it, I had to do it again because I didn't do that and it didn't boot the second time. But once you do that, it's totally fine. Maybe it's the settings checksum. I don't know exactly what the situation is. It's like a lot of this is kind of like, the monkeys repeating what we do and what the other monkeys do, and then it works for them too.
Yep.
But yeah, it was.
I mean, what would you have done if you hadn't stumbled on that comment thread?
I literally, it's the first time I've ever gone to a blog like this and the comments were useful because it was all people who had different monitors sharing the ROMs the place where they found the firmware and stuff like that. And then there was a series of there's a ROM hacking, a firmware ROM hacking site. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Sounds like a dangerous rabbit hole.
Look, it's not a good idea to do this, but they had a bunch of bootleg firmwares for monitors, which it's not like real piracy.
Dude, wait, hang on. I need to go check on this then, because there are still things about this. I have two of these identical ASUS monitors. There are still a couple of things about these monitors that drive me completely insane, to the point that if somebody hacked firmware to disable them, I would think about trying it.
Yeah, so the URL, if you have an LG monitor that's having this problem, search for LG31MU97 not powering on, how to repair this piece of shit. And that'll take you.
Is that the name of the blog post?
That's the name of the blog post.
That's great. That's great.
And then the comments down there take you to I'm
sorry, can you just for everyone's benefit, what is it? LG
31MU97 not powering on, how to fix this piece of shit, I believe.
31MU97?
MU97, yeah.
There it is. Found it. integer13.wordpress.com.
Yep.
Not that's the one. How to repair this piece of shit. I want to go check that monitor firmware page and see if there's anything I could benefit from.
Well, I was just saying, then you can check search for CH34A 341A in the comments, and you'll find a bunch of stuff. Be real careful. Make sure you virus scan any programming tool that you use, because they're a little like the programmers were. I found 4 that were really laden with viruses before I got to the one that I wanted, and I'm afraid to recommend them because of that. Because like the one that I ended up using is the same one that was loaded with viruses, just from a different site. So,
really?
Yeah. If you're familiar with Linux at all, my advice would be to run the Linux subsystem and just use the flash ROM, because I wish I had done that. It would have been much easier.
Yeah. Actually, I will say, I don't think WSL lets you access USB devices.
Oh, so then you probably have to actually boot on, like do a Ubuntu boot CD or something.
Boot from a live USB or live Linux image.
Yeah. I'm looking for the site with the flash ROMs right now.
Yeah, that sounds dangerous. I don't know.
I mean, you can absolutely torch your thing, but the nice thing is you can read the existing ROM first, so you can always write it back, right?
Sure. That sounds logical.
It's not a one-way trip unless your BIOS firmware, whatever, torches something on the board. Anyway,
yeah.
I don't see the firmware.
That's fine. Before we move on, I will say if somebody offered me a way to disable the auto input select on these monitors, I would fall to the ground and kiss their feet.
Yeah. Have you looked at the service menu?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in there, VCP codes and stuff that I
kind of scary.
I'm not brave enough to mess with because they're all unlabeled. Anyway, that's very cool that you were able to fix this.
Yeah, I was really stoked. It's a kind of the hardest core thing I've fixed in a long time. So anyway,
I'll take this opportunity to mention real fast. There is some construction occurring directly beneath my feet as we speak.
Oh,
that has just ramped up. I don't know if you can hear it, but if
I
that's
don't hear
coming
anything
through on
no.
the recording, I apologize.
So what do you got cooking? What's on your plans?
Real quick. Let me ask one follow up on the monitor.
Okay.
To your knowledge, did LG ever offer any kind of like blanket, no questions asked, make good on this, or did they just sweep it under the rug and be like, "Oh, sorry"?
If it happened under the warranty, they would replace it under a warranty.
Sucks, unless it's like a very long warranty. That extremely sucks because
it was not a very long warranty.
This is a pretty catastrophic problem to have.
It felt real bad on a monitor that was this expensive, because at the time a 34-inch ultra wide was like a 1440p vertical resolution. It's a pretty expensive monitor at the time. Now it's not, sure. Like it would have cost me $200 to replace it, but
still though, I mean, that's just like that is if that happened to me, that is like I'm never buying another LG monitor or maybe LG product again.
I bought one of these and they sent us one for review, and I'm not sure which one this is. Okay. So this might have been this might have been an early release one, even, but it was a widespread enough problem that it was worrisome.
Yes. Oh yeah, okay. I could run down some of the stuff I've got. Do you want to ping pong back and forth here?
Yeah, we can go back and forth if you want.
I am talking through a brand new piece of audio gear that anybody who watched our Nextlander stream on this past Thursday, where I finished Fallout kind of test.
Which Fallout? Fallout 1?
Fallout 1.
Wow. Had you ever played it before?
No. And this tells you how long it took me to get through Fallout 1 on stream, because I started playing it around the time the TV show came out. Just finished it this week. I mean, there have been a lot of breaks in between. For various reasons.
It's a pretty big game though, right?
Yeah, I probably put 25, 30 hours into it.
That seems right. I never played those. I wasn't into top-down RPGs when I was a kid.
It is so janky. I cannot believe it. Like, apparently they developed it under some duress or had to ship it quickly or something, but it is unbelievably buggy.
I feel like those games of that era are often pretty buggy.
It's pretty jank.
And a lot of them just came out and then never were touched again, too.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And there are, I'm trying to think how to describe this. There's got to be like a game developer term for this. I mean, I guess it's a hack, basically. There are other issues about it that are not bugs as such, but are more things like, apparently they didn't have a lot of time to work on the companion characters.
Okay.
So the companion characters are basically just repurposed NPCs that don't work quite correctly, for example. Like,
that makes sense. That fits.
For example, you have to pickpocket your companions in order to give them equipment because they didn't come up with a good formal way to give your people stuff without. You can also use the barter interface, but then they require you to pay them.
Wow.
Like they want money, even though they're in your party. Like it's kind of hilarious.
Is Fallout 2 significantly more polished? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, or like realistically, I'm not going to stream all of Fallout 2 ever. Like that's just too much Fallout to stream.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a while before I even check it out. I might try it just to see what it's like. But yes, my understanding is the Fallout 2 is substantially more of a functional game.
Well, because like this is way off topic. Sorry, but I remember when Fallout 3 was announced by Bethesda after they had bought that rights to that IP. There was a huge uproar from nerds who were like, they're going to ruin Fallout. They're making it a completely different kind of game. This is it's the ultimate RPG. And it turns out it was janky. So that really,
yeah.
Oh, well, there we go.
They kept that commonality. I mean, I'll say actually it was cool playing this game and finding out how much of what I consider to be like core elements of Fallout came from original Fallout and not Bethesda.
I can see that. Yeah.
Some of it's like look and feel things, just like sound effects and stuff. But some of it is core mechanics and core design elements that were like, oh, I would just assume that Bethesda tacked that on when they took over. I didn't realize that goes all the way back to the beginning.
Were there big giant monsters like super mutants and stuff in that one, or was everybody much human sized?
Yep. No, you fight super mutants, you fight death claws.
Nice.
Kind of the whole spread. Rad Scorps.
But
anyway,
onto the topic though.
Yes. Yeah. I bring that up. I bring that up because so what we did at the beginning of that stream was I knew I needed help getting this thing dialed in. Sorry, let me back up say what the thing is. I bought a DBX 286S, largely on the recommendation of some people on the Discord.
Hey, look, if you want a 286, I can get you one right now. I know I know a guy. We'll have to wait till April though.
I totally do, actually. If I had room for a 286, I would gladly take it on. This is a I guess depending on who you ask, it's a channel strip. It's a preprocessor. There are different names for this. It's a little rack mounted piece of gear that you run your microphone through that does a bunch of sexy processing on your voice before it comes back out.
And the upshot is, so I remember when we were in the whiskey basement, Vinny was like, hey, I need a bunch of money to buy this compressor. And the reason he wanted it was so that when people yelled into the microphone, we wouldn't clip anymore.
That is exactly why I bought this thing.
Which turns out in normal business type talking doesn't happen all that much. Mm-hmm. But in the kind of work that we do, there's a fair amount of yelling.
Yep, there sure is.
Yeah.
There's also a fair amount of, I don't know, there's a mechanical sound downstairs that's quite loud. I hope it's not picking up.
It's not coming through the call, but
this thing also has a noise gate on it. So anything that is like quiet, like ambient sounds in the room, hopefully will get gated out.
That's nice
as well. But yeah, clipping is where you are too loud for. I can't explain it electrically in terms of like.
It's when you go outside of the dynamic range of the microphone and the gain that you set up. Yeah,
it's when you're effectively louder than what your recording chain can handle.
Yeah,
and it cuts the top of the waveform off and just sounds terrible.
Yeah,
scratchy kind of.
It's funny because some people are really, really sensitive to it and some people don't notice it at all. It's a perception thing, like everything else in the human experience, it turns out.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't have to go through the entire chain here. You can pull up that Nextlander stream because we spent an hour. I pointed a camera at the front of it.
Oh, that's funny.
And we just spent an hour going stage by stage, dialing each one in. So it's actually like probably a decent little primer on what things like this do. For people who know, it's got a compressor, it's got a de-esser, an enhancer, and an expander / noise gate.
What is does the enhancer make the podcast better?
You want me to enhance up right now?
Yeah, enhance us.
How about I enhance the low end here? I'm talking.
Enhance it 30%. It sounds exactly the same as it did before, dude.
Am I getting more bassy?
Wow.
Am I getting more bassy now?
Wow, you sound real weird.
Am I getting bassy?
Yeah, you should turn it back. That's not good.
Wow, really? Like in a bad way?
It sounded real muddy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And similarly, I can't see these knobs super well. I should probably not throw off our recording here.
Don't turn to the knobs. Be careful with the knobs.
The enhancer can bring your like bass or treble up effectively.
So I was gonna say, where does this connect in your? Are you plugging this? Like, is your microphone plugged into this?
Yes, the microphone goes into this, and then a line out of this goes into my Motu, which is the USB audio interface that actually goes into the computer.
And you have a preamp plugged in between the mic and this?
No, so there's a preamp in the DBX. I did have a preamp. I was using a Triton Fethead.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, use a cloud lifter in this situation. But
I have a cloud lifter for that.
The cloud lifter is a little inline box, whereas the Fethead plugs straight into the back of the mic. So it was mostly just a space saving consideration. And they do basically the same thing. But the DBX has a preamp in it, so I don't have to use that thing anymore.
That's nice.
Yeah. So anyway, dialing this thing in is going to be an ongoing thing. Like we took that initial pass at making it sound good, but I think what I really need to do is record myself and just like narrate what I'm doing. It's like, now I am turning the enhancer up to 3 kind of stuff like that, and like hear myself in real time describing what I'm doing and hearing what the effects are, and then just go back and review that and kind of decide where it sounds the best.
So when I set up my digital mixer a few years ago, I had a script that I read. And I would say, hey, I'm adjusting this down. Yeah. And then I would read the script and I could compare one to the other really easily after that.
Yes, that's exactly what I want to do.
It took a day.
Yeah. Yep. I'm expecting it to take a while. Which, hey, it turns out when you have got time where you don't need to record podcasts for a while, you can spend a bunch of time dialing in your podcast thing.
Yep.
It's also rack mountable, or it is rack gear. It is a full on 1U full width piece of rack gear. I don't know if are there terms for the depth of rack stuff, because it's probably only like.
No, they're always racks are a certain amount of. I mean, I guess there's shallow racks for audio stuff.
There are shallow racks, I believe. But this is the depth of this is only like 5-6 inches, but it is a full width thing.
Yeah, that's how like my mixer is rack mountable, and it's like 4 or 5 inches deep, and then just the normal width.
Yeah, so I'm actually on the cusp, but also this thing doesn't have an on-off switch. It's just plug it into the wall and it comes on. And I kind of don't want to leave it on all the time, so I'm about to click order on. You can get these little like 1 and 2U undermounts, like desk undermount rack shelf things. So I'm going to get one of those.
Ooh.
I'm just going to get a 1U one of those, and I can mount this thing under my desk on that.
It's funny. I was looking at those the other day because there's a spot over on the right side of my desk where I could do that and have my audio stuff just hanging under the desk.
Totally. Because you know how I am about having a tidy desk. So everything gets mounted underneath.
So I worry about the power cables because the power cables crossing XLRs and audios is bad.
Yeah. I actually am seeing what looks like maybe a tiny bit of interference on my recording right now, but I don't think anybody's going to hear it. But still,
man, you got to get those balanced plugs. Pay that extra $3. Get those balanced quarter inches.
And I'm gonna mount it under here, and I'm gonna slap it on a smart plug, so I can and tie that into Home Assistant, so I can turn this thing on and off from my Stream Deck.
There you go.
Yeah.
So speaking of smart plugs.
Oh.
I feel like we talked about this, and this is the problem with talking and doing a podcast and talking about the same things off the podcast is that sometimes I can't remember if we talked about it when we were doing a podcast or if we just talked about it when we were talking about stuff.
I know you shared a screen with me at some point and showed me some of these gauges, and I commented on them, and that might have been on a recording at some point, but I think you can probably add some more depth here.
Yeah, I'm just going to hit it real quick. I got a bunch of TP-Link smart plugs that are like, it's like $20 for a 4-pack. They're $5 each.
Okay, so that is super weird. I've literally got a 20-pack of TP-Link Casa smart plugs that are $20 in my cart.
Yeah. And so they do power monitoring as well as on off.
Okay.
The ones I bought were the HomeKit ones, which are the ones that do power monitoring. I think some of the others do as well. Some of the older ones do not. And I've been using them to track how much power like my server and home lab stuff is using.
Are those, I'm sorry, just because I have been researching this and people might want to know, are those the Casa EP25s by any chance?
I believe that's right. Let me look.
The EP25s, and again, I was just going through this morning. Those are the ones that do like energy monitoring, and I believe the EP10s do not. Which are those are just the simple on-off ones. Yeah, the EP25 is HomeKit supported, does energy monitoring, etc.
So the ones I got the ones I have are 2022 model. Okay. Yeah, EP25 P4, which is the P4 just means it's a 4-pack.
Yep.
You can also do energy monitoring on their smart power strips, I think, as well, which is like the KP303 is a surge protector with 3 individually controlled outlets and some USB ports. The USB ports I don't think are controllable for what it's worth. But anyway, so I set these up. I set up a dashboard in Home Assistant, which I hadn't really done before, with the plugs that are the relevant plugs. And it's been super, super useful to know how much power I'm using on the day-to-day. And
I will say, I think we did touch on this recently, because I remember telling you that my server is something like 75, 80 watts and yours is like 7 or 10 or something.
Yeah, but that's also, I have 2 servers. So I have the NAS server, which is a low power CPU and a bunch of hard drives. And then I have the other one.
Yeah, that's my whole machine with the hard drives and everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. The power management stuff in Home Assistant, just in general, like I hooked my PG&E up to it so I can see how much power I'm using moment to moment from PG&E.
Oh.
It's 36 kilowatt hours right now, which I think the car must be charging. But anyway, it's nice to have a sense of how things are going in terms of power usage on the moment to moment.
What do you mean by PG&E thing? Can you actually monitor your usage in real time?
Yeah, so you can hook your PG&E backend up to your Home Assistant now just by logging in.
Oh, like, wait, is that something on a cloud server? Like,
it's a service.
You're hitting an API to get that. It's not the box on your house is what I mean. Right?
So you can do that too, but you have to put a clamp around where the power comes into your house, or you have a smart panel. Like a lot of times when you do like solar and battery installs, you'll have a smart panel that can route and flip stuff on and off as needed. And I say flip stuff on and off. I don't mean individual circuits. I mean, if you could set up a panel that connects your batteries and your solar so that if the power goes out, it cuts off the outbound power so that you're not electrifying line workers. But yeah, so you can also just do that without the clamp now, because PG&E provides API access to your current use of gas and power if you have smart meters.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That kind of makes me wonder if I should get the energy monitoring plugs, but I don't think I need that. This is just for toggling things on and off. So,
well, the energy monitoring plugs they're
not honestly that much more. It's like maybe $2 to $3 more per plug. It looks like
the EP25s were the 4-pack of EP25s. Oh, it's $29 instead of $20. Yeah,
it's $30 for the energy monitoring ones and $20 for the non.
I think I got them on these go on sale fairly regularly. Well, right now they're 40% off, but I think I got them on. Looks like I bought them on November of 2 years ago, which makes me think it was probably a Black Friday thing.
Yeah. Speaking of Home Assistant,
yes,
this kind of ties into my next project, but I've been thinking about wiping my Home Assistant config and completely redoing everything from the ground up. Is that a terrible idea?
Yes.
Am I going to have to, how much am I going to have to onboard back onto my Wi-Fi again? Everything should still connect, right? Doesn't that typically live on the device?
Let's see. So your Wi-Fi will be the same. It'll still work. Your devices will still be connected, but you'll have to I guess the question is, how many of your devices use like standard interfaces, right? Like Zigbee or Matter and Thread and all that stuff. And how many are using some Internet of Shit thing, and how many are connecting directly over your Wi-Fi, over your Wi-Fi. IP address? They're all Wi-Fi.
Everything is Wi-Fi.
So if that's the case, then all you'll have to do is reconnect the individual integrations and then redetect everything. And if you have to do some sort of pairing thing with them, you'll have to do that.
Okay, interesting. I may or may not do that. I'm not sure. I've got some deeper Home Assistant-y stuff that I want to do. I'm going to mention real quick, when I was researching this stuff, I saw some people who are full on going to the lengths of getting a second access point for their Internet of Things stuff now.
I mean, there's pros and cons to that, right? Because the problem, if you do that with Home Assistant, then you won't be able to do like your media, like you want your media players to be on the same network as your phone and all your other things, right? So you can use the software remotes, because I use like the Apple TV remote that's built into the phone constantly. I use Siri to talk to the Apple TV all the time.
Right.
But then if I do that, then I won't be able to pipe media using Home Assistant to the Apple TV or to the HomePods or any of that stuff. So it's a little fraught, honestly. Like you can do VLANs where you put all the bulbs and all that stuff on one VLAN, but then your Home Assistant has to be configured to live across both VLANs if you want to use it for media stuff, is the kind of TLDR.
Yeah. But that does, I mean, what are the upsides there? That does solve any kind of like time sharing problems, right? Where you've got 800 smart plugs sharing time on the radio with actual devices you care about. Yeah,
but if you have a modern access point, then this time slicing doesn't matter because there's multiple radios, and it just means you won't get full throughput, which you're probably not going to use on Wi-Fi anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, probably not worth it.
I don't think it's worth the overhead or the extra power.
Yeah.
The thing I do think, like, honestly, the thing that's going to bite me is I'm going to run out of IP addresses and I have to expand my subnet internally, because there's a lot of light bulbs, it turns out.
It's just a configuration change.
You say that, but
okay, a lot of configuration changes.
A lot of configuration changes. Yeah. Anyway,
to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, it should be changing the DHCP server, but I'm sure it's going to be more complicated than that, because I bet there's a bunch of stuff that I set up static 10 years ago and I've forgotten about.
Yep, that will happen.
Yeah. Anyway.
Configuration creep.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. Anyway, the reason I bring up Home Assistant there and maybe redoing that is that I am going to finally try to containerize over this break.
Home Assistant. So, okay. I'm generally a fan of containerization. I think that Home Assistant is the one place that I don't like it. Really? But I also have a fair number of Matter and Zigbee devices floating around still.
Okay.
And getting access to the radios inside the containers is always fraught.
Yeah. Well, I've done a fair amount of that already. I have passed devices through to containers. I do a form of containerizing, and maybe I should back up here. We're talking about things like Docker, things like, ways to encapsulate services like Home Assistant or Plex that you run in a self-contained little box rather than installing them directly onto your device.
Yeah.
I do a form of that already. We've talked about it many times. Like you mentioned the jails on TrueNAS and the BSD world.
Yeah, I love a jail. I use BSD jail.
I use kind of a Linux equivalent of that, but each container is its own full dedicated Linux install.
That's too much.
Running the full like init stack and everything of a Linux machine, which is, that doesn't actually take that many resources, but it is kind of a lot.
It's too much. The problem isn't the resources, it's the overhead.
It's mainly the configuration. Like you have to go in and manually configure everything on each system container.
Yeah, that's the overhead. I mean the human overhead, not the computer overhead.
As opposed to just getting a Docker image and just spinning up the container as its own separate application. And yes, I mean there are things to deal with there as well. That's not exactly like a fully automated process either, but
the problem with running Home Assistant inside a Docker container is that then you're Dockering Docker, because Home Assistant is essentially a bunch of Docker containers.
Is it?
Yeah.
Under the hood? Really?
All of the integrations are Docker containers.
Really?
Yeah. That's why Paulus told us this when he was on the podcast. So he talked about it because that's how they solved the plugin problem.
Oh, wow. I must have forgotten that.
Yeah. That's why they don't have, that's why everybody doesn't have to update their plugins every time they update Home Assistant core to use new backend stuff, is because everything's just Docker containers and it just kind of works itself out.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Home Assistant does offer its own official Docker image, so I assume
it works
functional enough.
Yeah. I think it's just, it depends on how you use home. Like I use Home Assistant as the home for everything that's always on in my house. So like my WireGuard install runs on the Home Assistant as a Home Assistant plugin, right? So I wouldn't want that to be inside 2 layers of containerization, I think.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it works.
Yeah.
But I am no stranger to having to pass hardware into containers. Like I've had to pass the QuickSync device in to make Jellyfin do hardware video transcode. I had to pass a Fuse device in, which is a virtual file system.
Ooh.
to get our clone to work in a container. Anyway.
So what are you going to put in the containers?
I mean, I've like every service that I've got running anywhere, Home Assistant, Plex and Jellyfin, OwnTone, which is that AirPlay.
Oh yeah.
Music server, maybe the Unify controller if I care enough.
I run my Unify controller in a container. I run a couple other things, but it's nothing. It's all. I run the Linux game server manager is running in Docker.
Right.
I set up Portainer a few weeks ago for the first time, which is like a web front end for managing your Docker containers. It's very good.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah. This is kind of a big topic. We probably are going to do a full episode about containers when I get fully up to speed on that stuff.
I hope so, yeah.
This is probably better saved for then, but I've got here in the notes Docker versus Podman.
Yeah.
Because I dabbled with the stuff a few weeks ago and I actually spent a lot more time with Podman than I did with Docker.
This is what's the difference between Podman and Docker?
Effectively two different systems that do more or less the same thing, but there are a lot of nuances there. Podman came out of Red Hat.
Okay.
Like if we really want to get into it, I mean, this is probably better saved for that other episode.
Okay.
Podman does not run a daemon in the background. It doesn't have Docker has a program running at all times to monitor all your containers and manage stuff. And there are ups and downs to that. Like, is that ever actually going to be relevant for a home user? Probably not. But Podman is daemonless or serverless. There is no There is no thing running in the background constantly they use the same containers, to be clear. Like,
so you can run a Docker container inside Podman.
Yes.
Okay, because I was going to say, the benefit of Docker is that there's Docker containers for freaking everything.
No. In fact, they are even command line syntax compatible. Like Podman literally, in fact, they say, like Red Hat says flat out, you can just alias the Podman executable to Docker and just go about your business. Like they're it's like a drop-in replacement basically. But there are a lot of nuances in the configuration that are different and stuff. But
gotcha. The Portainer thing is much more surface level. It just gives you a way to download and like you can say, hey, go download this Docker make file from build file, whatever from the Docker repo.
Yeah. And
it does it and sets it all up for you. So it's real idiot proof, which I like.
And anyway, I've got a couple of VMs, one with Docker and one with Podman that I started dabbling with, like I said, a few weeks ago, but I'll dive in and mess with both of them in a sandbox environment and see which one I like better. And then I have to start worrying about all the port mappings and stuff because of the way containers do networking versus the system containers I've been using, which is very different.
The way the containers do networking is the weird thing, because I liked the FreeBSD jail methodology, which basically gives each jail got its own IP address and showed up as a virtual server. Yeah, on your LAN, each container is its own full computer effectively. It was really easy, and also like browsers and computers understand different IP addresses better than different ports. Yes. On the Docker side, instead, you're using the one IP address of the server everything's running on and just mapping different ports. For different services, which is kind of a lot to handle. Should we just move on to my next thing that I'm? Well, I was going to say the other thing I'm running locally is Perforce for the game that I'm working on. Oh. Not a real, like a toy game that I'm working on privately. Oh, that's cool. And so I don't have to pay anybody in the cloud to run that. It just runs on the server in my garage, which is really nice. I mean, I was actually looking into what it would take to self-host your sort of blue sky. What do they call it? The PDS portable. Oh yeah. Their personal data server, whatever they call it. Yeah, you shouldn't self-host that. I don't think I'm going to. I looked at their instructions and I was like, I don't want to mess with this. Having self-hosted a Mastodon server at one point, it's not a good idea. You should pay somebody to do that if you want to do that. Yes. Anyway, the reason I mentioned should we move on to my next thing is because it kind of ties directly in here. Black Friday is coming up. Yeah, that's when everybody buys the things. That's right. Well, the things I hadn't considered buying on Black Friday were services rather than goods. I buy Adobe every Black Friday. Yeah, like stuff like that. It just never really occurred to me. I think I am ready to have a virtual private server. Ooh. I think a DigitalOcean, Linode, however they say it's like that kind of thing. Yeah. A little, basically a little cloud instance, a little VM in the cloud that somebody hosts for you. That's just kind of a full on generic Linux machine you can do whatever you want with. Well, so I used to run this is what I run the Mastodon instance on for a long time, but when it was just private before we made it for the whole TechPod. By the way, there's a TechPod Mastodon instance. It's at mastodon.content.town, I think, or Mastodon. Anyway, I believe that's right. Yeah. the line nodes are like for $5 a month, you get like a little, it's like 2 gigs of RAM or something, slice of a server with 1 core, 2 cores or something. It's great for running lightweight stuff.
Yeah, so those are the types of specs I've been looking into. And again, I'm going to wait and see what the pricing does for Black Friday, because stock pricing is maybe a little stiffer than I would like to pay for some of that stuff. It seems like a lot of what you're looking at these days, like you said, it is usually like 1 to 2 gigabytes of RAM. But a lot of on the CPU side, a lot of what you're looking at is shared CPU resources, like
which
a virtual,
fine.
like a virtual CPU. Like you're basically like your instance is basically just a VM on a server with a bunch of other people's VMs, and they're kind of all sharing available CPU resources. But if you're not doing anything super heavy, that's probably fine.
So I think I set this up, set mine up originally for a Photon server, which is a kind of Unity game networking server for Foo, which basically just works like a repeater. So you basically connect all of your hosts to that IP address, and then it just repeats everything that each one sends to all the others. Yeah. It's real easy networking, assuming you set up the stuff that gets sent right. Yeah. It wasn't great for that. Like that's pretty lightweight server wise compared to like, say like a Valheim server that runs like the entire state of the game on the server and then doles out the important stuff to the relevant clients. But running like a VPN, I ran a VPN. I ran,
you mean like an outgoing VPN?
Like an outgoing VPN.
Yeah, I thought about doing that.
I ran a proxy that could come back into my house, so I didn't have to have open ports on my network.
That is the main thing I want to get this for.
That stuff was good.
Yes, that is about 90% of why I want to get this. Is I want it to be a proxy into my house, so that
you can like host a server for the public and not have it available for everyone to know. That's
exactly it. I want to point my domain. I'm not sure which domain, but I'll point a domain at the VPS, not at my home anymore, and then so my public IP is not super obvious.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then, I guess I haven't looked into this too much. Sounds like this is how people would do this a lot. Like I would basically just tunnel the VPS to my house over something like WireGuard.
You'd probably set up a permanent tunnel between the two, right?
Yes. And then how this ties back into all the container stuff is I am probably finally, and this is a lot to take on for the next like week and a half. I don't know that I'm going to get through all of this for a while, but I'm finally going to set up a reverse proxy, which helps with all the kind of port mapping stuff we were talking about with containers.
Oh, right.
Which basically will let you, instead of dealing like with a bunch of port numbers on IP address, you can say like lex.brad.com and have that.
You own brad.com?
I really wish I. Yeah. Actually, what I'm really kicking myself, I was talking to some people in the Discord about somebody registered bradshoemaker.com back in like late 2012.
Oh, no.
Like I easily could have gotten that.
Oh, Brad.
To be fair, I don't think I owned any domains in 2012. Like I was just not in that pipeline, but I really, now that Blue Sky is a thing and people are starting to use personal domains for their usernames, I really wish I had that .com.
Speaking of, I set up a Blue Sky for TechPod. You can follow it at techpod.content.town on Blue Sky.
Yeah, it's getting pretty fun over there. I think we may revisit that topic soon too. Once this influx of users dies down, I'm making the transition. I'm pretty much almost fully switched over at this point, and there's a lot to learn there with like custom feeds and stuff that people are doing with it that has its unique feature set that we might dig into at some point.
I was going to say there's two parts of it, right? One is the interesting thing is that it's programmatic. The algorithm is you can choose your own algorithm basically, right? Which is really cool. You can even roll your own algorithm if you want, but also there's some cool backend stuff about how the servers work and how it's actually how they make it portable so that you can move your Blue Sky self from one server to the other and stuff like that. Anyway,
and crucially, they are finally now gaining what seems like the critical mass of users they needed for it to actually be worth using as a service. So
like 1 million users a day for the last few days. It's crazy.
I can't imagine how they feel right now. They must be pretty excited.
It's a tiny team too. It's like 20 or 30 people or something. Anyway, yeah. So the reverse proxy would help me, like, again, it kind of helps you map your services to easy addresses. Yeah.
Not as easy as brad.com, but it's a good example,
Yeah.
But that is a lot to figure out. And even the question of like,
you're going to need to upgrade your router, dude.
Maybe. It should be fun. Like, okay. I've already got an existing WireGuard set up here, so it would really not be hard to adapt that to this.
Okay.
And just tunnel. I run WireGuard on a Raspberry Pi 4 right now because my router, you're right, my router is not fast enough to do any kind of decent throughput for WireGuard. Also, Ubiquiti has broken half of the feature set on this router at this point. But I should be able to point the VPS at this Pi
It's time for OpenSense, Brad.
It absolutely is. I mean, that is a whole other topic. The only reason I have not bought one of those Alder Lake N100 boxes to make my new router, and this is probably a good long ways off, but I keep hoping that with everything Intel has going on with like Lunar Lake and the massive advances they are having in their mobile processors and how good those are turning out lately.
Yeah,
I'm kind of trying to hold out for the next generation of their sort of fanless embedded x86.
I'm really excited to see what Lunar Lake NUCs look like.
Yes, that's exactly it. Like because even these 12th gen, these Alder Lake ones are pretty killer.
Yeah,
cannot imagine how good the next generation of those is going to be. But that could be a couple years off, so we'll see. But there's even questions about like, do I run the reverse proxy on the VPS or do I run that on hardware in my house? Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yet what the best and most efficient way to handle that is, but we'll see.
I don't know. I have one more small thing that I did.
Okay.
My stream machine, I found out why my second PC wasn't updating from Windows 22H2.
Oh.
Yeah.
22H2? Not
22H2. No, I was stuck on 22H2 and I was like, this is going to be a problem because it's reaching end of support for 22H2 soon.
Yeah.
And it was because at some point I updated the BIOS and the TPM got flipped off.
Oh.
So Windows 11 was seeing it as not compatible with Windows 11, so it wouldn't do any further upgrades. So I flipped the TPM on and then it wouldn't boot anymore.
Nice.
In a way that was seemingly unrecoverable. And I spent...
Now that's a trusted platform.
let me tell you, I was fairly irate. So I pulled the SSD out and I put it in my USB to NVMe adapter and I copied the files off of it that I was sure I needed because it has a backup, but it's always nice to be safe. And then I nuked the SSD and just installed Windows 24H. I turned on the TPM, nuked the SSD, installed 24H4, which took like 10 minutes, it was pretty nice. It was fast. And I managed. So one of this is a machine that I basically just use for streaming stuff at this point. So it has OBS and software for my mixer and a Twitch bot and a couple other things on it. Nothing major. And one of the parts about using OBS, if you have like overlays and things that have graphics and stuff like that on it, is it's really, really, really important that you save all of those files that are referenced by OBS in one folder. And if you do that, then because like if you save a profile or save a scene collection in OBS, those are the two ways you can kind of save your settings is profiles, and scene collections are like a set of scenes, basically. It doesn't actually collect all the files that are referenced in those scenes. So what you do is you put all of the things that are in the scenes in a folder called OBS stuff, put that in your profile folder in Windows or Linux or Mac or wherever. And then you grab that folder. And then when you load the XML for the scene collection in the profile backend, it'll be like, hey, we're missing a lot of assets. And you point OBS at the folder that has all the crap in it, and it just starts working again. Now, theoretically, when we had Jim on 3 years ago to talk about OBS on the FOSS-Pod, he was like, yeah, we're working on a profile migration thing that'll just copy all your assets and stuff to make it. And it still hasn't happened. So
fair. It's open source.
It is. I mean, priorities. I get it.
Donate to OBS maybe if you want that to happen faster.
Yeah, absolutely. But the upshot is by putting everything in that one folder, I was able to make that transition about a 10-minute process instead of having to like recreate a bunch of crap.
Now, are you doing portable OBS as well?
No, I don't do portable OBS because it's janky in ways that are challenging.
Oh, come on.
Well, because here's the problem is even with portable OBS, if you put all of the files that you need in that portable OBS folder, it references their hard location on the hard drive rather than like in relation to the root of the portable install drive. So it doesn't give you the benefit of having a portable install. Oh yeah, no, that's for scene configuration stuff more than and encoder backend stuff. It makes it easy to migrate all of your settings, not so much the assets. Well, but all of the settings are just saved in your local app data / OBS Studio or something, right?
Sure.
Anyway, but yeah, that was up and working in no time. I managed to get Voicemeeter out of my pipeline for video stuff, which is exciting. And the only thing that was weird was I had to install VLC so that OBS would see VLC playlists as an option.
Interesting.
Because I use those for like pre-stream reels and stuff like that with the old clips and stuff like that.
I wonder if OBS must be hitting some libraries in the VLC install.
I assume that VLC, once I installed VLC, it worked. I think VLC has one of the toggle options to like install the VLC playlist plugin in OBS, and it does that for you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I was really pleased with how fast that came back. The only hard thing was I had to recreate my Stream Deck settings. And I set up.
Stream Deck.
I forgot to save them.
Okay, that's okay. Yes, because I may have lauded. I've had issues with Elgato software that we've talked about, but I have lauded Elgato and their Stream Deck system before for this one thing, which is this very nice, elegant profile export for the Stream Deck that makes it quite literally, when you reinstall the Stream Deck software on a new machine, it associates the extension of those profile
.stream or something,
exports, like .stream deck or something. Quite literally double click the file and it restores your entire Stream Deck profile. It's incredible.
Sometimes it's nice to declare Stream Deck bankruptcy. I'm going to say I have a bunch of fresh buttons. Everything's new.
Yeah, I get it. I'm still on 23H2. I have not pulled 24 yet, which is like 23 is not exactly out of date yet, but I'm kind of surprised at this point that they have not pushed 24 to me yet.
It's the normal thing where if you have weird hardware, then they're not going to give it to you until the hardware is supported.
I mean, I've definitely got some weird hardware, and I've got this 12-year-old Mellanox card in this machine, among other things.
Yeah, that'll update your drivers. Sometimes updating your drivers for stuff will trigger the install.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in a hurry. Like, I feel like Windows updates have gotten pretty boring. I feel like there was nothing on the 24H2 feature list that I cared about. Honestly,
the nice thing about 24H2 is that you can uninstall Copilot without using a bunch of registry hacks.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Last thing for me, real quick, we won't get too deep into this, but I have this NAS here, or the server, whatever you want to call it.
You're real brave for admitting this in public. Just FYI, people are going to roast you.
I know. This is embarrassing. That machine was on TrueNAS for ages. We've talked about this ad nauseum.
Yeah, we love TrueNAS.
But TrueNAS has a bunch of nice built-in automatic snapshotting, like backup utility stuff. Like they just put it all in the web UI. It's very friendly and easy to set up like regular automated backups.
I mean, it's not exactly. Oh, I guess if you have multiple drives, you can do backups with TrueNAS. It doesn't do it by default.
Or you can do it to external machines. You can. I think in their case, they want you to be running TrueNAS on the target machine as well, which is not great.
Yeah, you can just ZFS clone a partition.
ZFS send. You can do it yourself.
People are chainsawing outside my house. This is a loud podcast.
Anyway, long story short, TrueNAS made it pretty easy to just have it say, snapshot every hour and every day, and kind of automate the regular backup process you would like to have on a large store of data.
Yeah.
So you may remember I switched off of TrueNAS and went to just a bare Linux install.
Yeah.
Quite a while ago now.
People are going to be really upset about this, Brad.
September of 2022 is when I dumped TrueNAS and just went to regular Linux and started doing everything myself on this machine.
Yeah.
About 3 months later, in November of 2022, I bought a nice 4-bay external USB hard drive enclosure, like a nice one.
Well, that's a useful thing to have if you want to back up a big computer, right?
Syba is SYBA. I probably mentioned it back then.
We talked about it a long time ago.
I shucked 4 drives and put them in there.
Yeah. That's the next step of this process. And then you're like one step away from having pretty good backups ready to go all the time, right?
Okay, look, in my defense, that's a pretty big step.
I mean, I'm just saying.
When you no longer have the appliance software doing all the automation for you and you have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big step. So then I proceeded to never actually start snapshotting or backing up anything from my NAS.
Oh, no, Brad.
This hard drive enclosure has just been sitting here with hard drives. I mean, I've fiddled with it here and there. The problem is I just never have time to take this project on. Like I made a ZFS pool on this external drive. I've hooked it up. I fiddle around with it a little bit. Like I started moving in that direction, but I've never actually fully automated everything and started having my NAS start taking snapshots. And ultimately, I want to hook this thing into a Raspberry Pi on the other end of the apartment and start backing up nightly to that.
Oh, no. And I mean, I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah,
you should do that.
Yeah, in theory, everything I've planned here is fully sound. I just haven't actually done it.
Look, I think that this is the situation that happens to everybody on some stuff, right? You get busy. it's hard to remember that you were supposed to do something.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I mean, I never forgot. In this case,
okay.
I never forgot that I needed to do this. I just kind of kept conveniently putting it off and just ignoring the problem.
Look, I was giving you the benefit of the doubt there. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I am going to put some time into finally starting to back my NAS up again.
Back that NAS up.
Yes. I mean, at least I've got pretty good hard drives in this thing and nothing has failed in the last 2 years.
So I had an interesting thought as you were talking about this, because I was like, we pay for Google Apps for our domain.
Mm-hmm.
How much space do we get with that?
Is that you're talking about Google, like Google Workspace?
Our Google Workspace thing, yeah.
Gives you corporate Gmail and calendar and stuff?
Yeah.
Not that much space. I think it's like...
I think we get kind of a lot.
Are you sure?
I remember thinking it was kind of a lot. I'm looking now to see.
What designs do you have on it?
Well, I was thinking about maybe backing up my NAS to that.
Oh, I don't think it's that much space.
It's probably cheaper than buying the hard drives every 5 years, though.
I don't think it's that much space. I mean, we're talking like tens of gigabytes at best.
You think it's only tens of gigabytes?
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was like 2 terabytes.
Absolutely. No way. We absolutely are not paying the money to get terabytes of Google storage. No chance. I bet it's somewhere between like 15 and 30 gig.
I mean, I could save everything that's not my Blu-ray rips on that, though.
Yeah.
Admin console.
Are you sure?
90 gigabytes shared.
Oh, 90. Okay. So it's 90 for Nextlander, but I assumed it was more there because we're paying for more seats there.
No, I think you get a fixed amount until you move to the higher tier. That's
probably what it is. Okay. So,
90 gigs would get us a long way, though.
Yeah, it's not nothing.
Yeah.
But how would you mount it? What would you use to transfer to it?
I'd use a G drive or rclone, whatever.
rclone, yeah, rclone's probably what I would do.
rclone, and I would just do a specific shares. Yeah.
rclone's a little weird. You can more or less treat an rclone volume of a Google Drive like it's a local drive, but there are some idiosyncrasies to look out for.
Yeah, because the thing about how I use my NAS is I have like a bunch of stuff that's ripped media, and like if that gets I back that up, but it's just backed up to a single external drive occasionally. The other stuff, like there's a couple of personal folders that have like important files. It's like my shared. It's like a kind of local Dropbox is what I use it as. It's just like my local dumping grounds folder, and then there's a bunch of backups of other computers on the local LAN. Those don't need to be backed up. And like photos, but they're already backed up in the cloud. So I kind of don't care about putting them up on someplace. So yeah, I don't know. Interesting thought.
Yeah. A lot to tackle here. How much of this is actually going to get done? Stay tuned.
Well, if you have thoughts about Brad's backup strategy and how he's implemented it over the last 2 years, please let us know in the Discord, which you can gain access to if you're a listener and you subscribe to the Patreon, which is, the way we make money with this podcast. You can go to patreon.com/techpod. It is a listener supported show. So without you, the listener, we would not be here making the show every week. And we appreciate you all for supporting us.
We do.
Again, it's patreon.com/techpod. The Patreon is $5 a month. You get the access to the Discord, which is full of beautiful nerds. You get a monthly patron exclusive episode where sometimes we talk about things that we talk about on the main episode. As in the case of the power meters, I think we did that already.
That might be right.
And I also teased the monitor fix, which you get to hear phase 1 of the monitor fix, which is the real scary part that a lot of people had feelings about the wisdom. But as I pointed out at that point, it was a completely dead monitor and, you take your chances. And if you want to get shouted out on the podcast every month, you can sign up for our executive producer tier, where we thank those folks every month, including Andrew Slosky, Crow, Jordan Lippett, Bunny Fiend, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, James Kamek, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. I got to say, friend of the show, Kishore Hari, posted, he got a new 3D printer the other day, and he posted, I can't believe I'm up and running 15 minutes after I took this thing out of the box, making his first print.
Wow.
Which, like, the first time I built a 3D printer, it took 15 days to get it working.
I remember. What was that? The MakerBot?
That was the original MakerBot cupcake, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I now that you mentioned it, I remember that thing sitting there kind of half assembled for some time.
We broke some stuff and then had to go get some specialty parts places and had to have some stuff mailed to us. It was a process.
Fair. Is Kishore an experienced printer?
He is. I'd say he is a journeyman. I think probably not to out Kishore, but yeah.
Man, 3D printers have just kind of got there, huh?
They've gotten pretty good, it seems. So I might have to check out a 3D printer. It's been too long. The pain of the last MakerBot has finally faded, and I don't remember what it was like. So let's jump back into the void once more.
Yeah.
But that'll do it for us this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We hope you have a lovely, lovely week, and we will see you next time on the Tech Pod. Bye, everybody.